and tension have been artificially escalated by outside players. What is important is that the Turkish military actions would not be exploited by terrorist organizations, including by ISIS, whose fighters are jailed by the Kurds and are trying to free from those detention centers. Syria must be freed from foreign military presence. A sustainable stabilization in Syria has to rely on ensuring the sovereignty and territorial integrity of this country. This is our principled position, and we talked about it at length with Turkey. It is important that Turkey shares this approach to defend peace and security along the border. Turkey and Syria have to join their efforts. This is why they need to respect each other and to engage in cooperation. We need to launch a broad dialogue between the Kurds and the Syrian government. As part of such an inclusive dialogue, all the rights and interests of the Kurdish people can be factored in. The Kurds are part and parcel of the Syrian nation that consists of many ethnic groups. We also discussed further steps along with the peaceful settlement in Syria. There is a constitutional committee that's been authorized by the UN. The guarantors of the Astana format have worked hard in the past years to establish that new format. But the situation on the ground should not be a barrier to the launch of the Constitutional Committee. On the 29th and the 30th of October, we'll see the launch of that committee in Geneva. We also discussed the humanitarian situation. We need to continue assistance to Syrian refugees. We need to help them to go back to their homes, and that will alleviate the economic burden on the countries that have agreed to host Syrian refugees, including, first and foremost, Turkey. We call on international humanitarian organizations, particularly on the UN, to assist all the Syrians in going back to their homes without any politicization of that. I would like to use this opportunity to discuss bilateral issues. Last year, trade was up 16%. We exchanged opinions on what has to be done going forward. We expressed our conviction that the Intergovernmental Agreement on Settlements and Payments in our national currencies, signed in early October, will be a major contribution to that. We agreed to use the national currency. We agreed to expand the use of the national currencies, and we also agreed that Turkish banks will send digital messages under the auspices of the Central Bank of Russia, and the Russian Mir payment system will be used in Turkey. We discussed other big projects that have been positively developing. We are deepening our defense cooperation. Russia and Turkey are hosting mutual years of culture. I would like to thank the Turkish president, all of the friends and colleagues for a sincere and substantive dialogue. We are ready to promote our dialogue based on the interest of good neighborly relations. We also respect each other's interests. I'm particularly happy that as part of the intense negotiations, we've been able to come to a solution, and the foreign ministers will voice these solutions. These decisions are very important, and that will help to resolve a very tense situation that we are currently seeing on the Turkish-Syrian border.
Dear President, your members of the delegations, I would like to welcome you with all my heart. And once again, I would like to say that I'm really glad to be in Russia. As an introduction, I would like to express my condolences for the death of 2 Russian citizens at the construction site of the nuclear plant Akuya. I would like to express the condolences on my behalf and on behalf of my people. And in Krasnodar, 15 citizens of Russia died, and so once again I would like to express my condolences. And today's meeting, especially dear media representatives, we've been mostly talking about the events in Syria, but we used the opportunity to discuss the bilateral relations. As Mr. President has already mentioned, we've been discussing the domestic currency settlements. Not that long ago, we have signed corresponding documents. And I think this is a very important step towards the goal of reaching $100 billion turnover, trade turnover. As for cooperation and partnership in other areas, we continue our work. As for S-400, we continue working on the supplies, and in the near future, within the framework of bilateral cooperation for the good of 2 countries, so we are going to continue this cooperation. As for the defense industry area, we are making big steps, and we will continue to make these steps. With my dear friend, Mr. Putin, to provide the stability and long-lasting peace in Syria, in Astana format, and all other formats. We're making big steps. Using joint efforts, we are making a lot of decisions, and I would like to emphasize here the Sochi agreement that was implemented. It provided all the necessary conditions to form a constitutional committee. And we have a lot of expectations about this committee, so we hope that they will start working soon and they would bring their contribution, political contribution would be large. On the agenda, there was also the de-escalation zone in Idlib. This area is now relatively calm, so we see fewer attacks. In the near future, our main attention would be paid to the provision of this stability on constant basis. Turkey, with our Russian friends, we will do everything possible to keep this area calm. We do everything we can to achieve this. So, my dear friends, today, with Mr. President, we have mostly discussed everything in relation with the Peace Spring operation. I have given him a wide range of information, and the main goal of this operation is to get rid of the YPG terrorist organization and PKK terrorist organization, and to create all the conditions so that Syrian refugees could return home. Keeping the territorial integrity and sovereignty of Syria is what we are trying to achieve. We do not want to acquire someone else's lands. We are carefully planning all our steps in this regard. 4,000 square kilometers were ridden of terrorists during the two of our operations, Defense of Euphrates and Olive Branch. 365,000 of Syrian refugees voluntarily returned to their homes who lived before in Turkey. And because of our joint efforts, years later, we finally have an opportunity to bring peaceful life to these lands. 3,650,000 Syrian citizens have been living for 8.5 years in our country. And 350,000 of them are Kurds. That's why this last military operation, Peace Spring, we are doing it so that we could rid these lands, these territories of terrorists, all the territories that will be liberated from the terrorists in the future. They will be used to settle Syrian citizens, about 1 million Syrian citizens, and we have shared this information with our partners. So hopefully the international community would also contribute to this important plan. And we are going to work on implementing this plan with our Russian friends, and we are going to sign up for all the projects that would be to our liking. Dear friends, today, with the high-esteemed Mr. Putin, we have also discussed anti-terrorist struggle and the territorial integrity of Syria, and we have signed an actual agreement. And using this agreement in the Syrian lands, we would not allow creation of any separatist movements. Both Turkey and Russia are not going to put up with such movements. And starting from tomorrow, we are going to put our project into work. For 150 hours, there will be a safe zone 30 kilometers deep. We will be patrolling the 10-kilometer zone with our troops. All the terrorists from YPG will be brought outside this zone. Both countries are going to take any measures necessary so that to prevent terrorists to enter this zone. As of today, both Turkey and Russia will continue to contribute their efforts to achieve the peaceful solution for Syria. And as dear Mr. Putin has already mentioned, we are starting the new period in this regard. So I would like to wish that this agreement would be beneficial for both our countries, for both our peoples, being friends and neighbors of the Syrian people. We are ready to put all efforts, to use all efforts to bring the peace and stability to these countries. So one more time, I would like to thank dear Mr. Putin for hospitality, and so I welcome you with all my heart.
Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the Russian President, I would like to read out the Memorandum of Understanding between Russia and Turkey. The President of the Russian Federation, Vladimir Putin, and the President of Turkey, Recep Tayyip Erdogan, agreed on the following. First, both countries remain committed to territorial integrity and unity of Syria and so the national security of Turkey. Second, they remain committed to fighting terrorism in all that its form and to counter separatist sentiments in Syria. The existing status quo in the theatre of operation between Tel Abyad and Asalain will remain. Its depth is 32 kilometers. The Adat agreement is very important. Russia will contribute to complying with the Adat agreement. Fifth, starting from midnight, the 23rd of October, the Syrian area will host the Syrian military police and the Russian military police. They will assist in removing YPG groups within 150 hours. Starting from that moment, the joint Turkish-Russian patrolling will begin to 10-kilometer area from that security zone, except for the town of Kamishli. Both parties will take action to prevent any infiltration from terrorist elements. Eighth, joint effort will be taken to assist in safe return of refugees. Ninth, a joint mechanism to monitor and verification will be created to monitor the implementation of this memorandum. 10th, both parties will continue working on a political solution to the Syrian crisis as part of the Astana format and will support the operations of the Constitutional Committee.